Hello, everybody. Coaches from coast to coast, hopefully, and in 43 countries around the world. you're, you're here for the podcast known as the Hard 90 Coaching Podcast. I'm Coach Hallett. This is our second episode. I'm excited about today's topic. I was thinking about what topic to do first, and I came to the conclusion I remember getting my first program, and I showed up to the meeting with the kids, and before the season, and I was just sort of introducing myself as a new coach, and looked around the room, and a bunch of eyes really not on me, sort of just heads down, sort of just listening or whatever, and acting like they had to be there instead of wanting to be there. And I just remember there was something missing from the group that you could just feel, you can just feel it in the air. There's something missing. And so I thought, when you start a new program, I think the number one thing to talk about is instilling and implementing a hustle system. That's right, hustle. And there's all kinds of different kinds of hustle. Okay, so you got physical hustle and you got mental hustle. And for me, you can control only a certain amount of things in sports. You can only control a few things. A lot of stuff is skills, if you face somebody better than you, whatever, but you can always control your hustle. And that's both physically and mentally. And so from day one, taking over that program, and from day one, taking over the Palo Verde program in Las Vegas, I always instilled the hustle system from day one. And if kids buy in, they stick. And if they don't buy in, then they sort of find something else to do. But you have to be a stickler for it. And if you really want to turn a program around quickly, the first thing you have to do is get them to understand how important hustling is. There's a lot of reasons why hustle is important. I mean, you're talking about beating out a ground ball by a step that scores a run from third with 2 outs. You're talking about making that sprint down the sideline in soccer on the left wing when the ball's crossed over and you outrun that, you out hustle that defender and you got one-on-one with the goalie. In the classroom, hustling in the classroom, reading your stuff that you're supposed to read and turn your homework in on time and all that other stuff. And as a teacher, we're always hustling in the classroom. I mean, you got to have kids engaged for 45 to 55 minutes. And if you don't, the kids will know. And the same as a coach. I got to hustle. I got to be ready. I got to keep the kids mentally into practice. And just I want them hustling all around the field. And it's just something you instill in the kids early, and you keep banging it in there, and all of a sudden it's just natural. And the younger kids that come in the program the next year learn from the older kids by their example, and so on and so forth. That's why this podcast is called the Hard 90 Podcast, because that's like the number one thing I teach when I take over a program. It's the first thing I mention every time in our preseason meetings. I have a whole sheet written out. They know exactly what the standard is. And from the second they step on the field, they understand they're hustling. So true hustle is the act of giving everything you have toward the task at hand. And I always think there's 2 types of hustle. You have physical hustle, which includes like running out every fly ball or ground ball and disciplining yourself to run hard in wind sprints or drills, or even working hard during those times when nobody's watching. You would not believe how many kids, in baseball anyways, if you turn them loose to go hit in the cages down, we had a baseball field here, and the cages were down the hill a little bit, so the kids were sort of on their own to go down and hit. And you'd not believe how many times that first year I took over the Palo Verde program that I go stand next to the fence and sort of peek down on them from behind a tree or whatever, and they were down there taking daddy hacks and, swinging from just everything's pole, and they're talking and carrying on like it's just a lazy practice. I had to get rid of that quickly at both Camas and Palo. So it's just a teaching moment. So even when somebody's not watching, are you doing the right thing? If a coach sends you down to the bullpen, your job is to go down to that bullpen and work at your craft. If coach tells you to go run sprints, or I didn't really do polls a lot because I did them for pitchers because it's elongated them out a little bit. But A pole is when you run from foul pole to foul pole on the outfield warning track. And the kids hate them. They just absolutely hate them. I found a lot of more interesting ways to get kids to train their cardio than the poles. And I'll talk about that later on a different podcast. But I'm going to tell you a couple of them maybe today. But yeah, so it's like doing the right thing when nobody's watching as well. It's a character thing. Hustle becomes your team's character. It becomes what your team's known for. And the biggest compliment you can get when you're playing another team is that coach coming up to you after the game and saying, "Man, you guys really hustle. Like, you guys play hard." And that makes me grin from ear to ear, because we teach that. We burn it in their brains from day one, even negative day one, back in the off season when we're doing stuff. So talking about running out ground balls and fly balls, have you ever been coaching a game where your kid hits the pop fly out to the center field and just sort of jogs down to first base, and the center fielder drops the ball and your kid's sitting at first base when he should be at second base? Or a ground ball where your kid hits a hard ground ball to shortstop and runs about 4 steps out of the box hard and then jogs, and the ball goes right to the first baseman, but the first baseman drops it. There goes off their mitt. And if that kid would have been running hard the entire way, he would have been safe. But instead, he looks stupid by being halfway down the first baseline, and the guy goes and picks the ball up and runs back to first and touches it. I think we've all been a part of that. It's just important to get out of the box and have a hard 90. And it's gonna make the pressure's gonna be on the defense, especially on like a slow hit ground ball to one of the infielders. If you're hustling out of the box, they feel that pressure. We practice that. We practice that with our infielders. We try and get that pressure lessened by letting the runners start halfway down the first baseline and hitting little dribblers to the infielders. They got to come up and make a do or die play with guys hustling down the line. So we actually worked the reverse of that for defensive hustle. So, I mean, it's just physical hustle is so important. The point is that you're doing it the right way and you're willing to sweat in order to get better. Everything kids do on my baseball fields when I was running a program, you sprinted between everything. So when you have a transition, like you go from your pre-practice stretch, we call it run, stretch, throw. We'd stretch, we'd run, and we'd throw. You know, to get our legs loose, our muscles loose, and then we'd do our throwing lines. And in between that and our everyday defensive drills, which we did second, the kids would sprint. If they had to go to the dugout to get to get something, they'd sprint there and sprint out to their EDD drills. It was just a thing where nobody walked around. It wasn't a slow-paced thing. And as a coach, you have a lot of say in how fast your kids are moving and how engaged they are in practice by the pacing. I used to run a breakneck speed practice where kids would be going from this to this to this to this to this, and they were sweating and breathing and working hard. And we get an hour and 45-minute practice done when most teams take 2.5 hours. You know, and we get all the stuff we need to get. In fact, we get extra reps just by hustling in between stations or in between during transition times. Also, there's a few things you can do with physical hustle where you can really put your thumb on the team and really ingrain it in their brain, and that's by conditioning them. We did a drill like twice a week probably, where we split the kids in half and have half, like the JV would go to the first base dugout and the varsity would go to the third base dugout, and we'd have one team go take the field and all the positions, and if there's an extra kid, you just have them go to the extra position. You just double up at a position, and all of a sudden we'd yell out, and it'd be the third out of the inning, and they'd sprint from their spot to their dugout. And you can't cheat, you can't shorten it up, and you can't jog. If you jog, we add another rep. So everybody on the team's held accountable. The right fielder, if you're in the third base dugout, has a long run. It sucks to be the right fielder in that situation. But they're hustling as hard as they can once the third out's made of the inning. Okay, then you say, in, and everybody from the other dugout runs out to their spot and sprints, and you have to go to a different spot every time. So the right fielders end up having to run all the sprints all the time. Here he got his in, now he can go to third base, have a short run to the third base dugout. So we just have the teams going in and out, in and out, in and out, and they're dogging, but you know what? They're getting the idea that once a third out's made in an inning, whether you're on defense or offense, you are sprinting to your spot. Okay, you're sprinting on and off the field. I've had scouts through my years of coaching that have come up to me after games and said, "Wow, your team is impressive the way they get on and off the field. It looks really sharp." And it's a compliment. It's I pride myself and I pride our coaches and I pride our players on showing hustle like that because it looks good and it also gives you a little bit of an advantage mentally over the other team. The other team sees that. You know you got a team beat when they walk off the field. You know, they're just sort of, their body language is horrible and they're walking back to the dugout or they walk out to their position when the pitcher's warming up. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just a mental edge, and I think it's super important. Speaking of mental hustle is the most important factor in developing a winning attitude. Some call it interest, some call it enthusiasm, some call it aggression, some call it athletic intelligence, but actually it is all those things plus commitment, the will to win, proper focus, single-mindedness toward reaching a goal of winning a contest or winning the day. Now, I mean, mental hustle, man, that's huge. If you just think about it, you have total control over that. And if you instill it as a coach into your program, kids will have better at bats because they're more mentally focused. Okay, they're seeing things before they happen. They're going through situations in their head when they're in the field with a guy at first base. The worst thing you can ever see as a coach is a ball hit to your shortstop and he flips it to second base when there's nobody at first base. He didn't have the mental picture before the pitch. So he grabs it and flips it to second base thinking there's a guy in first. And the guy is safe at first because the second baseman has to turn around and throw it real quick. Or there's one out and a guy at third base and there's a pop fly over the shortstop's head. The shortstop goes back to catch it and sort of nonchalant catches it, thinking he made the third out. And he sort of puts his head down and jogs into the dugout. And meanwhile, the guy from third's tagging up and scoring, and the shortstop sitting there with the baseball going, "I thought there was 3 outs." That's why we do mental hustle. So everybody knows exactly what the situation is. I had guys when they were base runners, and I was in the third base box, they'd hold their finger up for how many outs there were when they're on the bases getting the signs. That way I knew they were into it mentally. They knew what the outs were every time, so it was on their finger right in front of their face. And everybody was on the same page. There was no mix-ups on how many outs or what the situation is or any of that stuff. So there's just little clues like that you can give your kids, little helpful things that will keep them mentally in tune to the game. I wanted to talk a little bit about what does it look like for physical hustle? So what does it actually look like? What can you see? And I already talked about a few of these, but I wanted to go over them a little bit more. Like running out every ground ball. I don't care if it's a sharp line drive that goes right to the shortstop in the air. We're running hard 90 through the base. We're not stopping after the guy catches it and go back to the dugout. Every ground ball, if it's a short hop and the guy grabs it and you're going to be out by 40 feet, you're still hustling down the line. Hard 90. Because you never know. I saw a guy get a double on a slow ground ball in the 4-hole, which is between the second baseman and first baseman. And my guy hustled out of the box. The guy grabbed it and he sort of had to catch it and he was off balance. So he sort of like ran with it out to the right field, out past the right field foul line. And the guy couldn't get the grip on the ball. My guy just thought second from the very get-go. And he went to second base. Big time Pete Rose slide in the second. Face was all thrashed and everything from the dirt slide. And he beat the throw and got in scoring position with nobody out. And just went crazy. The dugout went crazy for that hustle. It's contagious. A guy thinking, who's going to think I'm going to hit a weak ground ball to second base and get a double out of it? Or how about the guy that gets a little bleeding heart line drive over the shortstop into shallow left center and is thinking double all the way. And the center fielder sort of loafs it because he's not mentally tough. Sort of goes in thinking, it's just a single. I'll just get it and lob it to my shortstop. Well, as he's loafing it, my guy's running hard 90 out of the box, and he's thinking 2 all the way, and he forces a throw from the center fielder, and the center fielder, freaked out that the guy's going for 2. It's an easy throw right there, throws it over the top of the second baseman into the right field fence the foul area, and my guy ends up going from home to home inside the park just because of his hustle. Obviously, it was an E6 or E8, but anyways, he scored just out of hustle alone. It was just a little bloop single to left center field. That's what it looks like. Run out every fly ball. I see too many times kids they hit just a can of corn fly ball to the left field or center field, whatever, and they just sort of jog out of the box with their head down. The idea is when you hit a fly ball, you want to be on second base, at least halfway to second base, by the time that guy catches the ball. That way, if something happens, the wind in Vegas here and in Camas, I guess, the wind was pretty significant in the spring. So any ball in the air was an adventure. So we always taught, hey, you're on second base in every fly ball. It doesn't matter if it's a line, whatever. You're getting to second base, and if he catches it, the umpire will tell you you're out and you can leave the base. But if he doesn't catch it or something happens with the wind or something happens with sun balls are horrible too. When the ball's in the sun here in Vegas, because the sun's all year round, you never know what's going to happen. So you got to hustle out of the box and think too. That's what that looks like. Taking aggressive turns. Have you ever coached a team where the hitters, when they round first base, are super aggressive on their turns and it just looks sharp? That's what you want to teach your team. You want to teach your team, hey, we're going to take aggressive turns around first base on every hit. Now, if you hit the ball left field, when you take your turn, you're going to run towards the left fielder after you take your turn. So it's going to be a really sharp, you get your little question mark, move there, going into first base. You hit the inside corner, and you're going to run straight down the baseline, basically. If it's to center, when you come around first base and do your little question mark, you're going to do an aggressive turn. You're going to run sort of in between second base and the center fielder, so at that angle. And if you hit a ball to right, because the right fielder has a chance to throw you out on a ground ball or whatever, because it's closer, we're running right down that line. And if we see it's a single and the right fielder's going to grab it, and we know we're going to get the first, we're going to take a sort of a shallower button hook into first base, and we're going to run sort of 3 steps past the bag towards the right center field. You see what I'm saying? So you're angling your aggressive turn towards where the outfielder has the ball. Okay, and you really want to be aggressive. The great thing you can do is have the shortstop think he's a hero and overthrow first base trying to backpick you. All of a sudden, now you're in scoring position. Okay, you want to force throws. You want to be that aggressive.